He pretended to be broken, to test her loyalty. She married him for duty, not love. But when a fake disability, a fake marriage, and a hidden billionaire truth collide, the real heartbreak begins, for the CEO who never expected to fall in love with the one woman too pure to deceive. Right finger subscribe to this channel for unforgettable emotional stories where love, betrayal, and destiny collide in the most unexpected ways. Arman Khurana, the cold, brilliant, and dangerously powerful CEO of Khurana Group, stood at the edge of his glass empire looking down at a city that feared his name. A man who had everything except faith in humanity because years ago his mother had died broken after being cheated, humiliated, and abandoned by people she trusted most, leaving Arman with a wound so deep he believed love was nothing but a beautifully wrapped lie. And when his grandmother, his last emotional anchor, fell gravely ill and wished to see him married before her death, Arman agreed not out of belief but strategy, deciding he would test the soul of the woman fate would bring him by pretending to be disabled, powerless, and dependent, because only then would he know if love could exist without wealth or authority. And so through a manipulative broker and forged documents he arranged a fake marriage with Gauri, a simple, rural girl from a forgotten village where poverty lived like a permanent resident, a girl who had lost her parents early, carried the burden of her younger siblings, and believed marriage was not romance but responsibility. And when the proposal came that a paralyzed man from the city needed a wife for companionship in exchange for financial security for her siblings, Gauri agreed with trembling hands and a silent prayer, not knowing she was stepping into a carefully constructed lie built by a man who thought emotions were weaknesses. And the wedding was painfully simple, held in a village temple with borrowed flowers and whispered judgments, where Arman arrived in a wheelchair, his face emotionless, eyes sharp, while Gauri kept her gaze lowered, her heart pounding not with dreams but with fear and duty. And from the very first night Arman began observing her like a scientist studies an experiment, expecting disgust, resentment, or greed, but instead he found patience when she gently cleaned his hands, kindness when she spoke to him softly without pity, and dignity when she never once complained about her fate, even when she slept on the floor beside his bed so she could hear if he needed help at night. And days turned into weeks as they moved to his ancestral countryside estate, far from the city, where Arman continued his charade of immobility, secretly walking at night when she slept, locking away his strength during the day while Gauri cooked, cleaned, read aloud to him, massaged his legs with herbal oils she believed might heal him someday, telling him stories of village faith and miracles, unaware that the miracle was already standing right in front of her pretending to be broken. And slowly, dangerously, Arman began to feel something unfamiliar. Guilt. When she cried silently praying for his recovery, something even more frightening. Warmth. When she laughed shyly at his rare jokes, and something utterly terrifying. Love. When he realized that even if he remained disabled forever, she would never abandon him. And yet the story twisted darker when his corporate enemies discovered rumors of the marriage and plotted to expose and destroy him, sending spies disguised as servants who attempted to manipulate Gauri, offering money to leave him, insulting his disability, poisoning her mind with lies. But Gauri stood firm like a mountain, throwing the money back, declaring she had married a man, not his legs. And when Arman overheard this secretly, something inside him shattered completely, because the test had succeeded but at the cost of a lie too big to undo. And the suspense thickened when one night Gauri was attacked while returning from the market, saving Arman from a planned assassination attempt meant for him, taking a deep cut on her arm while shielding his wheelchair with her body, screaming not in fear for herself but begging them not to hurt her husband. And as blood stained the dirt road, Arman broke character for the first time, standing up in front of the attackers, fighting them with raw fury, revealing his secret strength in a moment of uncontrolled desperation. But Gauri had already fainted, missing the truth by seconds. And when she woke in the hospital, Arman had returned to the wheelchair, trembling not from injury but from the weight of his deception, while Gauri smiled weakly thanking God that her prayers were working because she believed she had imagined him standing. And guilt turned into self-loathing as Arman realized that the woman he was testing was far purer than the world that had broken him. But fate was not finished yet, because his grandmother recovered enough to visit, and during her stay she noticed strange inconsistencies, footprints, misplaced chairs, servants whispering, and finally confronted Arman, forcing him to admit everything. And instead of anger she wept, telling him that in testing her, he had failed himself, warning him that love built on lies always demands a cruel price. and the price came when Gori accidentally discovered the truth not through a dramatic reveal but through heartbreak. She followed him one night and saw him standing freely under the moonlight, tears streaming as he punched a tree in frustration, and the moment shattered her world as every memory replayed like a cruel joke, every prayer mocked, every sacrifice turned into humiliation, and without confronting him she left quietly before dawn, returning to her village with a broken soul, refusing his calls, rejecting his wealth, choosing dignity over comfort, while Armand descended into madness, abandoning meetings, destroying rooms, finally realizing that the power he had worshipped meant nothing without the woman he had betrayed, and the suspense deepened when Gori disappeared completely after village debt collectors threatened her siblings, forcing her to accept work in a distant town where she lived under a false name, believing love was a curse she could no longer afford, while Armand searched relentlessly, dismantling his empire piece by piece, using every resource not to dominate markets but to find the woman who taught him what humanity meant. And when he finally found her months later working in a factory, thinner, quieter, eyes dulled by pain, he approached her not as a CEO or a husband but as a sinner, collapsing to his knees in front of her in public, confessing everything without excuses, begging not for forgiveness but for one chance to prove that the man she loved, even unknowingly, was real. But Gori walked away, telling him that love tested is not love, and trust once broken does not heal easily. And the emotional climax arrived when Gori's brother needed life-saving surgery that only Armand's resources could provide, yet she refused his help until he quietly paid the bills anonymously, never revealing himself, allowing her to believe a miracle had occurred, and when she later discovered the truth, she confronted him with tears and rage, accusing him of still manipulating her fate, and Armand finally did the one thing he had never done before. He let go, handing her divorce papers, transferring half his wealth to charities in her village, publicly admitting his deception to the world, destroying his own image, choosing truth over possession, and it was in that selfless surrender that Gori finally saw the transformation not of a disabled man to a walking one, but of a broken soul to a healed heart, and the story reached its final twist when Gori revealed she was pregnant, a child conceived during the lie but born from genuine love, forcing them both to confront the question of whether love can survive betrayal. And in the end, under the same village temple where they had married, Armand stood without the wheelchair, without titles, without lies, asking not for forgiveness but permission to spend his life earning back her trust, and Gori, tears mixing with a soft smile, placed her hand in his, choosing not because he was powerful, healed, or wealthy, but because even after the deepest deception, his love had learned to tell the truth, proving that sometimes the greatest miracle is not walking again, but learning how to love without lies.